Welcome to Courage Class. I'm Dr. Lindsay Kwok Hugh, and each week I'm in conversation with our community's changemakers and trailblazers. Together, we explore the unspoken parts of our Asian and Western experiences, finding strength, growth, and healing that reflect who we truly are, not who we've been told to be. I'm so glad you're here. Class is now in session. Every generation inherits stories about success, about sacrifice, and about money. But inherited stories don't have to become inherited limits, especially for Asian American women. Today I'm joined by Chin Ru Foo, founder of Crew Riot and executive coach, whose work explores what happens when we replace fear with curiosity, scarcity with possibility, and responsibility with agency. She has written about learning to move beyond the scarcity mindset she inherited toward a relationship with investing and calculated risk. This is one of my favorite conversations of the season that every Asian American woman needs to hear. So, let's listen in. Well, Chin Ru, I want to welcome you to Courage Class, and thank you so much for your time. You know, when I shared with you a couple of weeks ago when we initially connected that I literally looked up Asian American women invest, and the article that you wrote was one of the first articles that popped up. And I was just so incredibly taken by your story and the work that you have done to learn about investing, and then subsequently passing that on to your two incredible girls. So all of this is to say, really excited to dig in.
Well, thank you so much for reaching out, because I was incredibly tickled that that article that I wrote,
Yeah.
3, 4 years ago, popped up again with you halfway
Yeah.
across the world, and
Yeah.
that you'd reached out because somehow it had spoken to you. And I genuinely thought hardly anybody had read that article. And it was also many, many years ago, which, yeah, so it's wonderful that we're connecting over it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Like I said, such a big impact. But I would love, if that's okay with you, I would love to just go back sort of to the beginning, growing up. And I will share with you that, in my own household, it was all about save, save, save. And I remember my parents working 7 days a week and, just save, save, save for a house or what have you. Never talked about investing or wealth building or anything of that nature, I felt like. Now, that's just my experience. And I would love to hear a little bit more about you. What were some of the earliest messages that you received about money and success and security, particularly as an Asian woman?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we are both Chinese immigrants. I know for you to the
Yes.
US,
Yes.
but for me in Malaysia. So I'm Malaysian,
Mm-hmm.
and my ancestors came from China. But I think by the time I was born, I was third generation Chinese immigrant family
Okay.
in Malaysia.
Okay.
And as with, the cliche and stereotype around immigrant families, there's definitely this ethos of saving and
Yeah.
being frugal, and for each generation to work hard and do better than the previous one before.
Yeah.
And I think definitely inherent also in the Chinese culture is that uh, quality of frugality, and
Mm-hmm.
just being really mindful of the way that you spend, and a
Yes.
conservatism around how you spend your money. So that was definitely the prevalent thinking growing up. My
Yeah.
father was very big on saving money. In fact, when I think about all the stories he would tell when we were growing up, it was always around how he had so little money when he first started working. Even buying an apple took him, a lot of thought, because he wasn't sure if he had enough money left over to
Yeah.
buy, the nice little luxury snacks.
Yes.
Uh, the, he definitely instilled in us this idea of not spending beyond your means. But I
Mm-hmm.
think over and above that, it was just about the importance of living way within your means and putting things very safely in the bank. So
Yes.
there was definitely a repeated message of, being frugal and saving your money.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm curious to know when as you're growing up, as you're engaging with dad, are these like explicit lessons that or explicit conversations that he is saying to you, like sitting down and teaching you about these different principles of save and being frugal, living within your means? Or is this something just as a young person you just observed and sort of noticed?
Yeah, I think it was much more the latter. There was
Mm,
definitely none of the kind of let me sit you down in front of me
same.
and, let me wag my finger and tell
Yes.
you you need to spend less and you need to, count your pennies, etc. No, it was definitely more in observation. And, my dad was a pretty vocal person. And so you would hear the way that he talked about money, his relationship with money
Mm,
very often.
yeah.
So it was observed, but also I think in the way that he was very clear the expectations he had of us as children,
Mm.
that I am paying for your education,
Ah,
and
yes.
your part of the bargain is to do well in school.
Mm,
And I want you to be independent and be successful. And I think inherent in that message was always don't take the money for granted because we work so hard to
absolutely.
save up enough money to give you everything.
Yes.
And your part of the bargain is just, not to take the piss with that. And
Yes.
yeah, and to hold up your end of the bargain. So
Yes.
there was always, I guess, a sense of duty and a sense of responsibility,
Yes.
knowing that my life was possible because him and my mom had saved, so
Yes.
well to provide for us.
Yeah. It's really incredible to me. We grew up in two different parts of the world, but the exact same messages and even the way that I learned about money, it just what you're sharing resonates so strongly. In fact, my dad used to say, money doesn't grow on trees. Or if like we
Yes.
needed money for something for school, he said, let me just go outside and pick money off the tree. Like he would just guilt us so
Yeah.
readily. But Chinru, you mentioned a couple of different values. You said working hard. Your parents definitely wanted you to do better than to work hard in school. I'm curious to know because you're starting to allude to it, but I would love to give it its own airtime. What did you really appreciate about the financial values that your parents, particularly your dad, passed on to you?
I think there is value in frugality. I'd
Yeah.
say that to begin with. And
Yeah.
there is value in spending within your means.
Hmm.
I do fundamentally believe that the route to having financial freedom is to spend within your limits.
Yeah.
Right. And to know the difference between a luxury that you would sometimes indulge in versus just being extravagant
Yes.
and, wasteful with money. So I would say I still hold on to some of those lessons around spending within your means.
Yeah.
So that's one. I would say my dad was also a little paranoid about money and about money going. And sometimes, I mean, I don't have it that much, but sometimes I feel it can be healthy, especially when you
Mm.
start your own investment journey, to know that money can come and money can go,
Yeah.
and that we are not necessarily in control of all the forces and the financial forces that lead to money and investments being a risk. And
Mm.
therefore having some healthy dose of reality that,
Yeah.
money doesn't actually grow on trees, and
Literally.
that,
Yes.
there are many risk factors involved, is still, I would say, useful.
Yeah.
And I guess inherent in never taking money for granted is a lesson around the importance of working hard for your money. I
Mm.
think there is immense value in that,
Yes.
even if it can tip the other way.
Yes,
right? Where, we just
absolutely.
become slaves to the job and,
Totally.
the money's just saved under the pillow. That also is a little bit foolish. But I think the work ethic that was ingrained probably in both of us is, I think, useful. But I think there is a yes and to that lesson.
Absolutely. I'm curious to know from you, which of these lessons do you feel like eventually limited the way in which you think about money and even building, um, like
Yeah,
wealth
and I
building?
suppose the the paranoia that money could like just disappear,
Yeah.
and then also, work hard for your money. If you don't take it beyond that, it it can be limiting because for a while I definitely grew up believing that the objective of a good job or a good career was to afford myself a good standard of living.
Hmm.
However, I have learned that the good standard of living, yes, is working hard and doing what you love, but there is also a way to make your money work for you
Oh,
rather than you work for money,
yes.
right? And I think that flip is important. And what he didn't role model or teach me was that you have authorship of money.
Ooh,
Yeah, and
powerful.
money is simply a shapeshifter, right? Do
Mm,
not allow your life to be governed by the need to make money. And I think that was the prevailing kind of guidance, right? We work hard to save, to make money so that we can
yes,
eventually retire.
yes,
That is that linear ladder that we were raised to believe.
yes.
And I do think that it's only half the story.
Yeah, wow, that is incredible. That word authorship. I mean, I just feel like that just needs its own airtime in and of itself. How did you come to learn that principle around money?
I would
Like
say,
that's really
yeah, I
incredible.
am still learning it. I am still learning it. So to give you an
Mm,
example, um, I think it ties to this idea of, money can go, money comes and goes,
yeah.
and it is like water. One of the books I've read that I thought was really useful was by an author called Lynn Twist, and she writes a book called The Soul of Money. And
Mm,
she talks about how you can channel money like water to be a force in any shape that you'd like. If you want it to fuel a life of greed or a life of glamour, you could. If you want it to fuel a life of meaning and purpose and philanthropy, you could. Just see money as water and a shapeshifter.
wow.
And your role in the authorship of it is to know that money can bend and it can change shape according to your values and the things that you choose to focus on. So I think also in her book, she talks about what you appreciate appreciates. So if you choose to spend your money on generously taking your friends on holiday once a year, right?
Yeah.
That will lead to certain kind of generative growth in one sense,
Wow.
right? Or if you choose to, spend your money on your own education, that in itself feeds a certain kind of growth. So uh, I am learning that money is simply a tool that facilitates the life I want, and the life I want has to be a reflection of my values.
Wow.
So money is simply the
Good
water
Lord. Yeah.
conduit.
That is
Yeah, and then
so incredible. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and then the other thought is you were asking about authorship, and I was saying I was just learning, still learning about it, is, to that point of money coming and going. So a few years ago, no, maybe 2 years ago, I bought cryptocurrency. I
Hmm.
know, I know nuts about cryptocurrency,
Okay.
really, right? So
Okay.
I just thought, this is like a new innovation, digital currency. Let me invest in it, and let's see where it goes. And I knew going in, I was like, you don't know enough about the fundamentals of cryptocurrency. In fact, most people don't seem to. And therefore, you've got to recognize the risk that you're taking. So,
Mm.
yesterday I look at this cryptocurrency portfolio and I'm down like 40%,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And what I'm learning to the point of authorship is not getting too upset or hung up about it, because the thing that I thought was you have to take accountability for the decision that you made when you went
Oh,
into it.
yes.
And if you're 40% down, it is because you really didn't know which way it was going to go,
Mm.
right? And therefore, there is authorship in your decision, and you've got to just accept it,
Wow. Wow. It's
right?
so,
And I think it
yeah.
takes a certain kind of perspective, right, to to have that lens, but also just acceptance of my own accountability in that decision.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
nobody told me to do it, and I take responsibility for that. So I guess that's an example of authorship, and also recognizing that things go up and down.
Yeah.
And I kind of knew when I went into it, I'm like, this could be a gamble. And now it's turning out to be a pretty bad gamble
Yeah,
so far.
yeah, yeah. No, I really appreciate you sharing that. First of all, just when you said that money allows you to shapeshift and determine the course of your life path, I think that that's so incredibly powerful because, to your point, we've always been taught to get the, good degree, get the good stable job, and then work for that company and then retire. And it's a you said it's a very linear path. But the fact that I can actually use what I am doing and what I am earning to determine a life path for myself, that feels incredibly powerful. And frankly, a lot of fun when I really think about it, because you get to be the designer of your own life.
Yes.
I'm curious to know from you, would you be willing to share with us how you thought about money in those first couple of jobs? Because and I'm asking because so many, especially women, we are generally speaking trained to pursue that linear path.
Mm.
Could you share with how did you think about, because did you come out of university thinking about crypto and investments?
No,
Yeah, like
no.
tell us,
And
like, what was your
crypto didn't
journey?
exist
Yeah,
definitely when I came out of
yeah.
university. So I would say I was very stereotypical in the sense that I
Mm,
studied hard. That was my bargain, as mentioned.
mm,
Came out with a degree, came out with a master's, and then started to work. And definitely the mindset was get a good job with a big, stable multinational that would
mhm.
pay the regular salary and the pensions and the insurance. And I think it's definitely another influence from my dad was a bias for big organizations that provided
Sure,
stability.
sure.
So I did not have an entrepreneurial bone in my body.
Yeah,
And I would say I'm still trying to find it, but it's difficult because it's really ingrained. The entrepreneurial spirit was not at my dinner table. Right. So
gotcha.
I think, that has been also quite long lasting as an impact.
Mm,
And therefore, my mindset was definitely just work hard in a big company and climb the ladder
yeah,
slowly
same. Yeah.
and save your money and take that very conservative, tried and tested route. So those were definitely my early years. It was nothing unconventional at all.
Mm, I see. I see. And then where did this shift happen? Like, what
Yeah.
compelled you to start thinking about it differently?
And I sometimes go back to think about this, and I think it was a combination of just starting to think for myself,
Wow.
which only happened like mid-20s.
Mm,
And then I think the luck of meeting some people and some friends in my circles who were just a lot more risk embracing and a lot more entrepreneurial.
okay.
So I think it was a combination of those two things. And when it came to thinking for myself, I remember thinking it would be a good time to invest in property. We were living in Singapore, and property prices at the time were, I think, at an all-time low from the last 20 years or something like that. So I knew there was good timing in property.
Okay.
But then there was also getting over the hurdle of, well, we need to take a giant mortgage to afford buying property. And the mindset of the generation before was not to take out a massive mortgage because the risk is
Mhm.
too high, right? So
Absolutely.
you got to save as long as possible for the biggest down payment possible,
Yes,
for the smallest mortgage possible.
totally.
But I started to question that kind of rationale.
Mm,
And I think combined with the people that I'd met who were taking those risks with getting on the property ladder and maxing on the mortgage, that led to, I think, the first step in an investment, and that was
I,
property.
s- I see. Gotcha. Gotcha. Property
Yeah,
in Singapore or in the UK?
it was in
In
Singapore.
Singapore. I see. I see.
Yeah.
So you were really immersed to some degree. Is that fair to say? Like in conversations that caused you to sort of like sort of you said question maybe what you had learned growing up?
Yeah, and the questions related to my dad was always talking about putting money in the bank and the interest rate he would earn from the bank, right?
Hmm.
And the few times I heard him talk about stocks and shares, he would always be complaining about how the shares had dropped like
Yes.
15% that day. So there was like this, stress around uncertainty and risk that I would
Mm,
hear in conversation. So I think when I started to think for myself, it was this idea that, well, it's not that stressful if you have a longer term perspective on investments, and then you start querying, why is the logic always to put it in a bank and earning,
yeah.
single digit percentage? I'm like, does that make sense? That doesn't make sense. So you,
Yes.
you just start asking the questions,
Yeah.
followed by, does that make sense?
Yes.
Um, and then you start to conclude for yourself, I don't know if that makes sense. And then also combined with people that I was meeting, it started to influence a different approach. But it was very gradual,
Okay.
right? And yeah, it was a very gentle, gradual process.
I see.
And, I am really not a financial guru. If anyone's listening to this thinking they're going to get financial advice from me, don't, because I will say
Hmm.
that now in my late 40s, I am still learning how to invest my money, grow my money. I'm learning about my emotional responses to money. Sometimes I surprise myself, say with the cryptocurrency
Yeah.
example, but sometimes I I'm still learning how I can be impulsive,
Hmm.
and I think our relationship with money is largely psychological and emotional.
Yes.
And it's very rare that we are incredibly formulaic and disciplined about, our approach. But I will say that my relationship with it has been constantly changing
Mm.
and constantly shifting to one that has a little bit more risk appetite, has much more of a balance. And now I have a lot of real-time evidence that the route to financial freedom is not working for a corporation and having lots of
Wow.
bosses for the rest of your life.
Yes. Well, you're really, I think, and I know you don't need my validation, but I do think you are absolutely incredible. I think you are light years ahead of so many of us, generally speaking, in the Asian American community when you're talking about, first of all, you're normalizing also that this pull to like, sometimes you can be impulsive or you want to spend. I can't tell you how many women I have recently spoken to who are sharing with me that they want to understand what does the day to day look like, and then also protecting for your future and growing your wealth, like the day to day spending. And there's
Mm.
no guidance, even though this is what we're all immersed in, right? Like this is a struggle that every single one of us, no matter what your race, background, class, ethnicity, we all think about. Yet it feels like there's very little guidance around that. Yet you are someone who has just sort of taken the bull by its horns and said, I'm just going to try this. I'm going to do it. And I'm
Mm.
going to take responsibility for the outcomes. And I'm going to have this learning perspective. I just love that so much about your story.
Thank you. And I think it
Yeah.
reinforces that idea of authorship.
Yes.
I think that I would love, I think, for anyone listening to think about the authorship you might have
Mm,
in managing your own money. And if you don't have the freedom of that authorship, ask yourself how you might start to design for it.
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because,
Yeah.
I should share. So I've been speaking to women intentionally about wealth building for the last couple of months. And I think I'm 35 interviews in. Okay.
Wow.
And
Hmm.
the one word that every single woman, Asian American woman, has shared is around freedom.
Yes.
They said, this is what I desire in my life. It's not like the thing at the end of it's not the product, it's not the purse, it's not the house, it's not the lifestyle. It's the freedom, the ability to decide and be the author of their own life.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about, gosh, like the emotions you have experienced on this journey? Guilt, fear, people pleasing, fear of judgment. Did you have to overcome any of these different, I guess, emotions in order to get more comfortable with being the author of your own life?
So many emotions and learnings, but I
Mm,
will say what has been foundational for me that I do credit my parents for, and
mhm.
especially my dad, because despite him being that typical patriarchal Chinese
Sure.
father that
Yes.
was dominating,
Yes.
he didn't have sons. It was just me and my sister, and
Yeah.
therefore he always stressed the importance of us having financial independence. So from as long as I can remember, he would always say to me, never rely on any man for money.
Really?
Never rely
Wow.
on any
Wow.
man or anyone.
Yes.
So that was also another message, right?
Yeah.
He was anti-reliance and anti-owing anybody
Mm.
anything. And I think that has also planted a very deep seed in me, which is why when it came to choosing life partner, choosing who I might build a life with, but also what kind of life I wanted to build when it came to a family, etc. My sense of independence and financial freedom was really like watertight.
Wow.
I didn't need it wasn't ever within my criteria to look for a man who had higher earning potential than me,
Mm.
who was going to make a lot of money or how much money he had in his bank. That was never my criteria. And I think that's actually quite foundational because I know a lot of women, and many
Yeah.
of them are really good friends,
Yeah.
who don't have this mindset,
Yes.
right? Who still believe that the house needs to be purchased by the husband, or who
Absolutely.
believe that I can't respect the man unless he earns more than me.
Mm-hmm.
There are, I
Mm.
think, a lot of those deep-seated beliefs that are
Yeah.
a product of our
Yep.
patriarchal upbringing,
Yep.
but I don't think I had that. Or when it would surface, I would have to find myself struggling to challenge why I thought that way. So, my
Mm.
husband's an artist,
Yeah.
right? And he wasn't always an artist. He was an artist when I met him, but when we got married, he pivoted to art, and he's a very pure artist, which
Okay.
means that he doesn't do it for commercial pursuits. He does it for the art.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
that has meant I needed the financial stability, and I was certainly authoring financial stability and independence,
I
right?
see.
I was the captain of that ship.
I see. Yes.
And I part of it is a result of kind of being put in that position,
Uh-huh.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
and you know, I sometimes wonder if I had been with someone who was like a trust fund baby,
Mm-hmm.
what might that have done to my ambitions, my career, who knows,
Yeah.
right? But I think because from my 20s to, late 20s, I was definitely designing a life where I was in control of financial independence, not just for myself, but like building it for the family.
Mm.
Um, it definitely shaped my message around authorship,
I see.
right?
I
Yeah,
see.
but I think I can trace it back to just never needing the man to do that for me.
I see. I see. Which is
And
powerful. Yeah.
yeah, and I would wish that for any woman, right? Because we
Mm-hmm.
talk about feminism, and we talk about female empowerment. And I think there are a lot of women who talk about wanting, equal rights as men or wanting the same opportunities. But often I find you dig one layer down and they would like to be taken care of. They would like the man to buy the stuff. They would like the man
Yeah.
to pursue his career so that she can relax. And I'm like, can you have it both ways? Right. And, I
Yes.
think we have to be honest
Yeah.
with the things that we're really willing to work hard for,
Yeah.
right? And whether it matches with our deep-seated longings and dreams,
Yes.
and it's not any individual woman's fault. We've been fed this diet of Cinderella,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And it's really hard to beat it out of yourself.
Yes.
Um, but I would say I yeah, I thankfully, didn't have that need to be saved by
Yeah.
a man
Yeah.
financially.
Well, you just said feminist, and I was like thinking that when you were talking about your dad, I was like, he's like a feminist, like to some degree, because
He
encouraging
wasn't.
you
He
to be, I
wasn't. It
know,
was
but it
funny.
like when he's saying like be financially independent, I'm like, oh my God, or never rely on someone. I just think that, and with two girls, I think that that's incredible, to be totally honest with you. I'm
Yeah.
curious to know from you, did you ever feel, because you had mentioned like you are in charge of building or managing the family finances, the
Mm,
family's wealth. And if I were to paint Asian women just in a stereotype, we are raised to be the caretakers, to take care of everybody's needs, emotional and physical. You know, and you're an entrepreneur and you're building Crew and Riot and you're an executive coach and and you went from a corporate background with global experience into this world of entrepreneurship. So to me, I see your story and I'm like, oh, she understands how to like spend and invest in herself, in her career. That was not necessarily a message. Generally speaking, I think Asian women are given. And again, I'm speaking in very general
mm,
terms.
yes.
Did you ever feel guilty? Was it ever hard to spend money on yourself? As you were making these bold moves in your career? Could you give us a peek behind the curtain, I guess? What was your relationship with
Yeah.
money? Um,
I mean, I guess as I mentioned earlier, that frugality is still in me. I
mm,
wouldn't say I'm super frugal with myself, but I definitely don't spend extravagantly, and I'm very clear on what is sufficient to make me happy.
okay.
And I would draw a distinction between like abundance mindset and sufficiency mindset because
Mm,
I think I am I have learned what I need to spend on that will be enough. And mm, I don't know, for example, we had a really nice holiday in Japan as a family
hmm
in December, and it was expensive as a
hmm
holiday, and we didn't, thrift on, say, the hotels or the
Yeah.
food
Yeah.
or many of the experiences. We went for it,
Yeah.
right? And I knew that that was okay. That was a deliberate choice, right? Where
hmm
it's probably the only time as a family we're going to go to Japan for 3 weeks.
That's
Let's do it
amazing.
proper,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I think I am I am happy with the way that I know what money is enough to make me happy. But I guess when it comes to sacrifices or feeling guilty, my sense of guilt has often maybe come in relation to time. So perhaps when I was doing my global job, I was traveling a lot. The kids were young, and therefore always feeling you don't have enough time and
Sure.
that your family are getting the leftovers. But it wasn't so much about money. And I will say also there's something about when you know you are actively responsible for growing your own financial independence, it takes away the guilt of spending. So when I want to buy myself a really
Oh,
extravagant dress, I buy
yeah.
it because I'm
Yeah.
like, I earn it.
Yes.
right? So I
Absolutely.
think that relates to authorship too. I'm like, this is money that I work for, money that I invest in. No one else gave it to me. So if I want to buy that really ridiculous outfit, I'll buy it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, I don't feel much guilt when it comes to spending money.
Yeah.
But I think it's also because I don't spend it extravagantly.
I see. I see. I hear so much freedom. Like you almost light up when you talk about, if I decide, then I do it.
Yeah.
There's an awareness for sure in terms of the financial picture that you and your family have. As you're preparing, for example, for a trip to Japan, and you want this experience for your family, could you share with us? Like, how do you decide how much to spend in this experience in addition to saving and investing? So I'm asking this question because one of the things or themes that is coming out of some of these conversations that I'm having with Asian women is that how do I spend day to day and also save for the future? Like, what's a reasonable, rational method or protocol to utilize to understand that? Could you share with us your
Oh,
thinking around that?
oh
Like, how
no,
do you,
I think I'm
yeah,
a terrible person to ask this
no,
because
no.
I am not very detailed when it comes to tracking of
Mm-hmm.
expenditure.
Yeah,
So I guess it's how my brain works as well. I'm not very detail oriented
yeah,
and I'm not an Excel spreadsheet kind of girl.
yeah.
And
Well,
I
neither
am
am
not,
I. So you're in good company.
I am
So,
not meticulous at
yeah,
all. I'm kind of like slightly organized chaos kind of
yeah,
person.
yeah.
And therefore, I know by tracking, and this is like twice a year tracking how much we spend as a family a year and what
Yes.
I know is a reasonable budget per year.
Okay.
Yeah. And we have planned as a family how that maps out, say, until we're old,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we spend this much every year until we're old,
Yes.
then we're okay.
Yes.
And therefore, I kind of know the general direction of where we're tracking for the year,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
I know it's this amount, and as long as we keep within this amount, we're going to be fine.
Yes.
And I break it down into some of the big buckets.
Mm-hmm.
So education is one,
Yes.
household bills, mortgage, etc. is another. So you take out the big buckets first, and certainly holiday planning is a big-ish bucket,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that's the entertainment portion of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
So
gotcha.
what I can say is I do things by big buckets.
Mm-hmm.
And then as long as I know that it kind of fits within those big buckets and there aren't major variations,
Yes.
I'm not going to count, how many coffees I bought or how many dresses or,
Yes.
we're not buying like cars or helicopters or anything like that, right? It's just the
Absolutely.
big buckets are education,
Yeah.
household,
Yes.
and then holidays. And
Yes.
maybe that like then there's like second tier buckets might be like transportation and
Absolutely.
I don't know,
Yeah.
phone bills and
Yes.
technology subscriptions, etc.
Yes.
So that is my methodology. I just know the big buckets and I know if we're tracking to a general number for the year,
Yeah.
then we're on track.
No, I so appreciate you sharing that because one of the visions that I have in my head of someone who is like really managing and building wealth is it's like an everyday thing. In fact, I've heard this before. Some people are
Mm.
like every day, like I know the coffees and I know the dresses and I know like what I'm
Mm.
spending on the airplane ticket. And I sort of start doing a calculation and just in terms of like time and energy. And I'm like, oh gosh, like how do I balance and manage this? So I really appreciate you sharing that and offering another perspective of how wealth building and managing finances can happen. I think it's really powerful when women or people in general can just be open about their methodology because to me at least, there's no one right way or wrong way to manage. And so I appreciate
Yeah,
that so much.
yeah. And like I do wonder sometimes if I were someone who knew exactly how much I was spending every single day,
Hmm.
would I be, like richer at the end of the month?
Yeah.
Um, Maybe I would be like better off by, £200, but
Mm,
then I would definitely be poorer from a stress perspective, peace of mind
yeah.
perspective,
Yeah.
daily joy perspective.
Absolutely. Time you spend with your family
Yeah.
perspective,
Yeah.
right?
I'm like,
Yeah.
no, no, no. This is when I am working for money, and I'm
Yes.
not going to do that.
Yes, yes, yes. It actually that compels another question, would you be willing to share with us like what defines a rich life? Like what
Oh,
does that look like to you?
well, I think it's the answer you gave from
Yeah.
speaking to 35 women is
Yeah.
freedom.
Yeah.
100%. I don't have to think about that.
Yeah.
I do think, like we said, money is a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
It should give you freedom. That's what we should be seeking,
Yeah.
right? And freedom is not letting anybody decide on how you want to live your life,
Mm,
right? And, no judgment on how you want to live it, but
absolutely.
um, yes, freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. I would wholeheartedly agree. I wonder if I know your mom and you have two daughters, and I know folks are going to be so curious about how you are talking about money, saving, investing, et cetera, with your own daughters. Can you give us some advice, some guidance around how you are doing it, maybe arguably differently than how you grew up?
Oh, I would say that I don't think I'm doing it that well. So I'll tell you the aspiration and then what's happening in reality, right?
Mm,
So the aspiration, given the backstory we've talked about, I fundamentally want to impart on them this idea that you need to have money work for you. It is a shapeshifter. There are ways to make money, and it's not going to be from that one job you're going to work hard at for the next 30 years. Uh, I really want to instill in them the confidence to invest
mm,
and to learn the value of wealth accumulation, compound interest rates, et cetera, et cetera.
mm,
So all that is the aspiration and the intent. However, I think each kid is different. So I would say my oldest, who's 17, currently she is not that interested in money, I would say. For her, it's simply like a fuel for
mm.
a fabulous teenage lifestyle. And therefore, I find myself almost restricting her access to money because I sense with her that if I open the gates, she'll just spend it
Mm,
because
mhm.
she's in the current headspace where she just wants to live a fabulous teenage life with fabulous
Sure,
clothes and fabulous makeup, right?
sure.
So, and because she's not earning her own money yet,
Yeah.
she's not really grasping the value of it. And therefore, what's happening in reality right now is she's just realizing the restriction that comes with not having enough money. And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, well, that's a learning in itself.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to talk to her and teach her about some of the basics of investment. But when someone is not interested, they haven't reached that
Sure.
level, it's
Sure.
very hard
It's very
to,
hard. Yes.
yeah, it's very hard
Yeah.
to teach it. Some people are
Yeah.
just not that interested. And I wasn't interested at all at 17, right?
Yeah.
It took me, 2 decades to get really interested.
Yeah.
So how do you force it?
Mm.
So I'm finding a gap between my aspiration to raise these like, you know, financially independent feminist women
Hmm.
and the reality, which is that she just wants to have fun as a
Sure.
teenager,
Sure. I mean,
right?
so normal, so typical. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess I'm thinking about it. I'm kind of watching it happen, thinking, how do I drip feed this in a way that will
Mm.
hopefully, get absorbed at some point.
Sure.
Um, and then with the younger one, she's a different kid. So I can see she's way more interested in money. She's the
Oh,
one who's asking me, can you show me what stocks you're investing in?
wow.
So she wants to know, like, and she kind of wants to look over my shoulder if I've got like the investing app open on my phone.
Hmm.
She wants to see.
I see.
So I can see already it's a different kid, right?
Yeah.
That one I could teach much easier. right? And she'll just want to learn at a younger age.
Yeah,
Um, but then with the older one, you're like, well, how do you teach someone who is not that interested? Is it going to be just through trial and error and the mistakes, and the pain from mistakes? I don't know.
sure, sure.
So I I am finding the aspiration not really um happening in reality because everyone's different and the stage where they get interested is going to be different too.
Absolutely. They do. They have to have a genuine interest. And I think you're pointing to also just the struggle that all parents have around any topic. We always have like the aspiration and then there's the reality and in our
Yeah.
house, there's a gap. So,
Yeah, totally.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Totally. And
Um,
and then one day maybe
yes.
one of them will be on a podcast in their 40s asking, how did you learn about money? And then they'll be like, oh, the conversations my parents would have with each other at the dinner table. And it makes me think, well, what are the casual conversations we're having at the dinner table, right? That isn't about, the perfect script, right?
Sure.
Yeah, like what am I
Yeah.
getting hung up about? What do I penny pinch about? What does my husband penny pinch about? All that is going to get absorbed.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I may not be that conscious of the bad habits that might be, being conveyed
Sure.
without my awareness
Yeah.
versus the good habits.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. My final question is, what does courage mean to you?
In relation to money or in
Or just in
general?
general? We ask that of all of our guests.
Oh, right. I
Yeah.
should have known this. Courage. Well, I go back to, I think, the etymology of the word courage, which I think um, relates to having a brave heart,
Mm,
and so I like that idea of being true to who you are and your values and standing for it.
hmm.
And, we talk about that gap between aspiration and reality. Try and close that gap, right?
Yeah.
Get clear on
Yeah.
what your real longings from the heart are
Mm,
and live to it. And then if you find that your longings from the heart are not true to what you say, then you've got to address it. So
oh,
that brings me back to earlier when I said, some women say they want financial freedom, but then actually they really do want the Prince Charming to take care of them. Then
yeah.
you've got to address that, right? And I
Yeah.
think courage is facing into what the heart says
Yeah.
and seeing if that's how you want to live or you've got to address it and find a new way.
And that's like the responsibility you were talking about.
Yeah.
If you're really thinking about authoring your own story,
Yes,
you have to take radical responsibility for what's inside of you and what you want.
totally. And get
Yeah.
really honest. I
Yeah.
think, courage requires brutal honesty with
Mm.
the kind of
Yes.
person that you are,
Yes.
which is why I think, all the questions you've asked about childhood, how did it start,
Yes.
upbringing, all those values that get ingrained into us. It is really important, especially as we become more mature as women, to face into all those scripts that determine our
Yes.
behaviors today and and get honest with yourself so that
Mm.
you can really be courageous in a way that meets that gap.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautifully said. Is there anything that I didn't ask you around money, investing, that maybe you would want to share?
Actually, it was in my article, and I did want to read it out, that
Mm.
it was written by Morgan Housel, who wrote a book called The Psychology of Money. And I really highly recommend this book for anyone.
Okay.
And he says your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.0000001% of what's happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works.
Oh,
And I think it goes back to reinforcing this idea that it's emotional, our relationship with money, but never lose sight of the fact that it's a shapeshifter and, you know, you need to be in control of how you direct it.
Yes, yes. I mean, for me, if I could reflect on the conversation, this has been so much about authorship and feeling empowered to determine what outcomes you have in your life. And that feels incredibly exciting versus the script that you just referenced that we are all handed, right? And I've been
Mm.
unconsciously following that along. But there's an awakening that I feel like you've really called our community, the human race to be the author and the designer of your own life. And that is so exciting. It doesn't matter what it looks like. You get to determine your own adventure.
Yes.
And money is just the means to help facilitate that. It's not what we work for necessarily. Well, we work for it indeed, but it's exciting to be able to focus on being a designer, being an author.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would also finally say that I recognize there is a certain level of privilege
Mm,
in this approach, right? There are many
mm,
people who are just really struggling, even just to
yes.
get basic needs met.
Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
conversation, in some ways, assumes you have your basic needs met,
That is true.
right?
Yes. Thank you for saying
And
that.
for most
Yeah.
of us, we're just struggling to make ends meet, and it's very hard to go beyond just trying to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want to acknowledge that
Yeah.
because, I'm coming from a place of certain level of maturity and now having savings and, um, therefore having the luxury of being able to say, right, design your life.
Yes,
And
that
it
is
doesn't
true.
diminish it,
Yes.
but it is also, from a place of privilege.
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that because that is a very real thing for some of us. And so, that being said, I'm so grateful for this conversation. And you're an
Thank you.
incredible
Thank you
woman and
for
an
asking me.
incredible you're an incredible role model to not just our shared Asian community, but I think to just the human race in general. So
Oh
I
my God.
appreciate you really like laying that out for us, and really lighting that way for so many of us.